The sun had barely risen over the distant hills when the town began to stir. The small settlement was dusty, with wooden buildings lining the main street and a few wagons parked outside the general store. Horses neighed softly, their riders preparing for the day ahead. Life here was simple but often harsh, shaped by the unforgiving land and the constant tension with the surrounding wilderness. Among the townspeople, there was a quiet excitement, though, for word had spread that travelers were arriving from far away. Not ordinary travelers, but men who carried with them stories of bravery and skill, men who had come with one purpose, to win the hand of the young Apache girl who had grown to be the pride of the area. Her name was Naya. She was unlike anyone the town had ever known. Her hair was dark and flowed like a river in the wind, her eyes sharp and deep, reflecting the wisdom that came from growing up so close to nature. She moved with grace, whether tending to chores, caring for younger children, or walking through the market. But it was not only her beauty that drew attention. It was the quiet strength she carried, a confidence that made people listen when she spoke. Naya had grown up hearing tales of heroes, of brave warriors and daring cowboys, but she had always been drawn to honesty and kindness above all else. The 12 warriors arrived one by one, each making a show of their skills. They came from different tribes, each proud of their heritage and certain that they would impress Naya and her family. The townspeople watched with a mix of awe and curiosity as the men rode into the town square, their horses kicking up dust, their clothes adorned with beads, feathers, and symbols of their tribes. They performed feats of strength and agility, demonstrating their ability to ride, shoot, and fight. Naya observed quietly from a distance, noticing the pride in their eyes but feeling no connection to the displays of power. She knew what people saw: bravery, skill, dominance. But she wondered if any of these men truly understood the meaning of courage beyond the surface. It was on a quiet afternoon, as the sun glowed golden and the wind stirred the dust in gentle waves, that a new figure appeared on the horizon. He was a cowboy riding alone, his horse moving steadily without the flair or showmanship of the warriors. His coat was worn, his hat slightly tilted, and his boots showed signs of many miles traveled. There was nothing flashy about him, yet there was something in his presence that made people pause. He did not shout or boast. He simply rode into town with calm certainty, a kind of quiet respect that seemed to settle over the street as he passed. Naya noticed him immediately. There was an ease about his movements, a sense of someone who had seen the world but carried no arrogance about it. He helped an old man lift a crate without hesitation, guided a stray horse back to its stable, and offered water to a group of children who had been playing near the dusty well. There were no grand gestures, no challenge to prove his worth, yet he earned the attention of the townspeople in a way that the warriors could not. Where they sought to impress, he simply helped. The cowboy, whose name the townspeople would soon learn was Ethan, made his way to the center of town, tying his horse to a post outside the small inn. He did not linger unnecessarily, instead speaking kindly to the innkeeper, asking after travelers and sharing a few words that made the inn feel warmer just by his presence. People whispered among themselves, wondering if he had come to compete for Naya's hand as well. Unlike the warriors, he had no display of wealth or skill to show, no dramatic introduction, only a quiet assurance that drew people's attention naturally. Naya felt a strange pull toward him. It was not the thrill of seeing a man perform dangerous feats or the pride of watching someone claim strength. It was a curiosity about who he was beneath the surface. She found herself watching him as he moved through the town, helping here, offering a smile there, and never seeking recognition for anything he did. There was a simplicity in his actions that seemed rare in a world obsessed with showing off. She wanted to know more about him, to understand the thoughts and experiences that had shaped this quiet, steady presence. The warriors, noticing the new arrival, were not pleased. They had expected the competition to be straightforward, with each of them showing their skills and Naya making her choice based on their demonstrations. Now a cowboy appeared, someone who did not fit the expected pattern, and they grew restless. Some scoffed, believing he could never compete with men trained in the ways of the tribes. Others watched with unease, sensing that his calm confidence might pose a challenge they had not anticipated. Ethan, however, did not pay attention to their glares or whispered comments. He went about his day, helping with tasks that needed doing and speaking to the townspeople with genuine interest. He asked about the market, about the land, about the people, and in return shared simple stories from his own life on the trails. His words were honest and unpretentious, filled with lessons learned from long hours on horseback, from seeing the harsh realities of nature and the kindness of strangers along the way. People began to listen, not because he demanded attention, but because what he said carried weight and truth. Naya's interest grew each day. She found excuses to speak with him, to ask questions about the places he had seen and the people he had met. She noticed the way he listened when she spoke, truly listening without interrupting or trying to impress. He valued her thoughts and opinions, which was something the warriors never seemed to do. They were too busy trying to demonstrate their skill, too concerned with appearances and tradition. Ethan, in contrast, treated her as an equal, someone whose mind and heart mattered as much as any display of strength. In the evenings, the town would gather near the fire, and stories would be told of brave deeds both real and imagined. The warriors would recount tales of battles fought and victories won, their voices filled with pride. Ethan, when asked about his experiences, spoke softly of moments where courage had been needed not for glory, but for survival, for helping someone in need, or making a hard choice that no one would ever know about. The difference was clear to Naya and the townspeople alike. One was loud and dramatic, the other quiet and steady. One sought attention, the other simply acted rightly. Naya began to see the patterns in the warriors' behavior. They were skilled and strong, yes, but their bravery often came with pride and a desire for recognition. Ethan's courage, however, was different. It was practical, thoughtful, and rooted in care for others. When a wagon wheel broke on the dusty road outside town, it was he who offered to help, working until the wheel was fixed and ensuring the family could continue safely. When a horse became frightened and bolted toward the edge of the cliff, it was he who rode after it calmly, guiding the animal back without unnecessary risk or showmanship. The townspeople started noticing the contrast, murmuring among themselves that strength alone was not enough. Naya felt a sense of relief in his presence. With the warriors there was always tension, a test of who was stronger or braver. With Ethan there was no competition, only understanding. She found herself smiling more, feeling lighter when he was around. There was something comforting in knowing that someone could face challenges without needing to prove themselves. Someone who treated her and the town with respect and care rather than spectacle. By the end of the first week, it was clear that the arrival of Ethan had changed the rhythm of the town. The warriors continued their efforts, showing off their skills and attempting to win favor, but a quiet shift had occurred. The townspeople, and especially Naya, had seen another way of being, a way of quiet strength, humility, and genuine kindness that made them question the old ways of measuring courage and worth. Naya's curiosity about Ethan grew into admiration, though she did not yet understand the depth of her feelings. There was a sense of possibility, a hope that perhaps there was someone who could match not only her expectations but her heart. The sun set on another dusty day, casting long shadows across the town. Naya stood near the edge of the square, watching as Ethan helped an elderly woman carry water from the well. His movements were deliberate but effortless, careful yet confident. She felt a stirring in her chest, a mixture of curiosity, respect, and something more she could not yet name. The warriors rode past, their pride and skill still impressive, but now she could see that there was more to a person than what they could display in public. There was character, there was heart, and there was the quiet strength that spoke louder than any feat of bravery. As night fell and the town settled into a rare calm, Naya could not stop thinking about the cowboy who had appeared so unexpectedly. Ethan had come without fanfare, without intention to compete, and yet he had already begun to leave a mark on her thoughts and the lives of those around her. She felt a sense of anticipation, a feeling that the days ahead would be different, that perhaps the story of her life and the choices she would make were about to change in ways she could never have imagined. And somewhere in the distance the sound of hooves faded into the evening, a reminder that new journeys were always beginning, even in the most familiar of places. The day began with a bright sun rising over the hills, casting warm light over the town square. The air was filled with anticipation, as everyone gathered to see what the 12 warriors would do next in their efforts to win Naya's hand. Each warrior seemed determined to impress her and her family, and the town had become a stage for their feats. Naya watched from a shaded corner near the general store, her eyes following each movement with careful attention. She could see the pride in their faces and the effort they put into every act, but she still felt a sense of distance from all of them. There was strength, yes, but there was also show, and it did not speak to the kind of courage she valued most. The warriors began with horseback displays. They rode in circles, leapt over obstacles, and demonstrated precision with their bows and spears. Dust swirled around their hooves, and the townspeople cheered and clapped for the bravery and skill shown. Naya noted that while the warriors were daring, some of them acted recklessly, putting themselves at unnecessary risk for the sake of attention. They shouted and called to each other, their voices filled with pride. It was impressive, but it felt hollow in her eyes. She could not imagine choosing a life with someone who sought admiration above all else. Ethan, on the other hand, did not participate in these shows. He stayed at the edge of the square, helping wherever needed. When a horse stumbled in the dust and nearly fell, he was there, steadying the animal and calming its rider without making a spectacle. When a young boy dropped a bucket of water and began to cry, Ethan knelt, fixed the bucket, and offered a gentle smile that made the boy laugh. Naya noticed these small acts and felt her heart warming. Here was a man who did not need to prove anything to anyone, yet his courage and character were clear in every quiet action. As the hours passed, the challenges became more daring. The warriors climbed the steep rocks near the town's edge, showing their strength and agility. Some raced through the narrow paths, leaping over streams and dodging low branches. Others demonstrated skill with knives and bows, cutting targets with impressive accuracy. The crowd cheered louder with each success, and Naya's family watched with proud eyes. Yet, in the midst of the excitement, she could not help but notice the tension growing among the warriors themselves. Jealousy and impatience flared, and a few moments of recklessness almost led to accidents. She realized that skill alone did not guarantee wisdom or safety, and she wondered if any of the men truly understood the meaning of responsibility. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his quiet work. When a small wagon lost a wheel, he quickly assessed the situation, lifting the axle carefully and guiding the town's blacksmith in fixing the problem. He did not hurry for applause, nor did he boast about his knowledge. The townspeople began to see that true courage was not always loud or visible. Sometimes it was the ability to act decisively and wisely when it mattered most. Naya's curiosity about Ethan grew stronger. She found herself wanting to understand the thoughts behind his calm actions, the experiences that shaped his choices. The warriors, frustrated by the lack of reaction to Ethan's presence, started to challenge him directly. One of them approached with a boastful smile, daring him to race across the fields or demonstrate his skill with a bow. Ethan politely declined, explaining that he had not come to compete in their contests, yet he offered guidance and support to anyone who needed it. Naya admired this. He was not trying to prove his worth. He was simply himself, acting with integrity and care. The warriors, however, saw his refusal as a slight, and their pride flared. Some muttered about how the cowboy could not understand the traditions of their tribes, while others began to watch him more closely, trying to find a flaw. The day continued with tests of strength and bravery. Some warriors wrestled, while others lifted heavy objects to show their power. Naya observed quietly, noticing the sweat on their faces, the strain in their muscles, and the way they sought approval from the crowd. She began to realize that while skill and strength were impressive, they were not everything. She remembered the quiet moments when Ethan had helped those in need without any audience or reward. That was a courage that mattered in real life, the kind that showed a man's heart. Ethan spent time with Naya as well, answering her questions about the land, the trails he had traveled, and the challenges he had faced. He spoke in simple words, sharing lessons learned from experience and mistakes, but always with honesty. Naya listened intently, drawn to his stories not because of adventure, but because they reflected patience, wisdom, and respect for others. She began to see a side of life beyond the displays of skill and competition. A life where choices mattered more than appearances and where kindness could be as powerful as strength. As evening approached, a sudden problem arose. A fire had started near the edge of the town, likely from sparks landing in dry grass. Panic spread among the townspeople, and the warriors rushed forward, trying to contain it with force and bravado. The situation quickly became chaotic, with people shouting and horses bolting in fear. Ethan, however, remained calm. He guided townspeople to safety, organized a small group to form a bucket line, and found the best way to control the fire without putting anyone at unnecessary risk. His decisions were quiet but effective, and slowly the chaos began to subside. Naya watched, heart pounding, as Ethan moved among the people with confidence and care. The warriors had strength, but their efforts alone could not match the wisdom and calm courage he displayed. When the fire was finally under control, the town was safe and the people turned to him with gratitude and relief. For the first time, the warriors seemed to understand that courage was more than a display of power. It was the ability to act wisely, to protect and to care. After the fire, the town gathered near the square, tired but relieved. Naya approached Ethan, her eyes reflecting admiration and curiosity. She asked him quietly how he had remained so calm amidst the danger. He smiled and spoke simply, saying that fear could cloud judgment, but focusing on what needed to be done helped make the right choices. He said that courage was not about winning or showing off, but about doing the right thing even when it was difficult or unnoticed. Naya felt the truth of his words in her heart. She realized that this kind of bravery was rare, and that it mattered more to her than the feats of the warriors. The warriors watched from a distance, some in silence, others muttering among themselves. They had fought for recognition and admiration, yet the man who had done nothing to seek attention had shown the truest form of bravery. Some began to feel a flicker of respect, while others were frustrated, unwilling to accept that courage could exist outside the boundaries of competition and display. In the days that followed, the town returned to a rhythm, but the events of the fire had left an impression. The warriors continued their displays, hoping to regain favor, but their efforts now felt less certain. Naya's attention was increasingly drawn to Ethan, who continued to act with quiet strength and care. She found herself seeking him out, wanting to understand more about the person who had shown such calm courage when it mattered most. She began to realize that the heart of a man could not be measured by feats alone, and that character and compassion held far greater weight. The sun set over the town, casting long shadows across the square. The day had been filled with excitement, tension, and lessons that would not be forgotten. Naya stood near the edge of the square, watching Ethan help a group of children gather wood for a fire. She felt a warmth in her chest, a growing admiration for the man who had arrived quietly and changed the way she saw courage and strength. The warriors rode past, still proud and skilled, but she now understood that true bravery was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet, thoughtful, and rooted in care for others. As the night settled over the town, Naya knew that the days ahead would be filled with more challenges and choices. The warriors would continue their efforts, each hoping to win her favor, but she felt a sense of clarity she had not felt before. She had seen a different kind of courage, one that came from the heart, and she wanted to understand it more deeply. Ethan's presence had shifted her perspective, making her realize that strength without wisdom and kindness was incomplete. She felt a quiet anticipation, knowing that the story of her life and the decisions she would make were about to take a new direction, guided by the lessons of this day and the man who had quietly shown her what true bravery could be. The days in the town had grown warmer, and the sun shone brightly over the dusty streets. The 12 warriors continued their efforts to impress Naya, displaying their strength, skill, and courage in every way they could imagine. Yet despite their impressive feats, Naya found herself increasingly drawn to someone who had not shown off a single act to prove himself. Ethan remained quietly at the edges of the competition, helping wherever needed, offering guidance and treating everyone with a steady calm that seemed to radiate trust and respect. It was not long before the bond between Naya and Ethan began to grow, built on conversations, shared moments, and the unspoken understanding that passed between them. In the mornings, Naya would walk through the town to gather water or tend to small chores, and she often found Ethan nearby, assisting someone or quietly observing the needs of the community. He did not make a show of his actions, but they were always helpful and thoughtful. One morning she noticed him helping a man repair a broken fence that separated the town from grazing land. The man was struggling to lift a heavy post, and Ethan stepped in without hesitation, lifting it carefully and securing it in place. Naya paused, watching him work, and felt a warmth in her chest. There was no pride in his actions, no desire for recognition, only care and competence. She realized that this kind of man was rare, someone who valued doing what was right above seeking attention. Over time, Naya began to spend more time with Ethan, They would talk about small things at first, about the weather, the crops, and the routines of the town, but gradually their conversations grew deeper. He would share stories of his travels across distant lands, describing the challenges he had faced and the lessons he had learned along the way. He spoke simply, without exaggeration, but every word carried meaning. Naya found herself laughing at his small jokes, reflecting on his observations and feeling comforted by his calm presence. It was a companionship built not on grand gestures or displays of skill, but on mutual respect, understanding, and a growing trust that neither had rushed to declare but both felt deeply. Meanwhile, the 12 warriors noticed the growing attention Naya gave to Ethan. Some were angry, unable to understand why a man who had not performed any feats could draw her interest. Others were curious, watching his every move, trying to decipher what made him so different. There were whispers among them, arguments about whether courage and bravery could exist without dramatic displays. Some began to feel a reluctant respect, seeing how effectively he helped the townspeople and handled challenges without seeking applause. But their pride still urged them to continue their contests, hoping that skill and strength would eventually win over Naya's heart. One afternoon, a problem arose in the town that tested more than physical strength. Heavy rain from the previous night had caused a small creek to swell, threatening the nearby fields and homes. The townspeople were anxious, unsure of how to respond. The warriors immediately rushed forward, attempting to show their strength by building makeshift barriers and moving heavy objects to protect the area. Some succeeded while others struggled, often acting hastily or without coordination. The work was noisy and chaotic, and Naya noticed that the display of skill alone was not enough to address the real danger. She felt a sense of relief when Ethan stepped forward, calmly assessing the situation and organizing a plan. Ethan guided the townspeople to work together, assigning tasks based on each person's ability and ensuring that the barriers were strong and effective. He moved steadily among them, giving clear instructions and encouragement, and his calm demeanor helped to ease their fears. Naya watched as he coordinated the effort, realizing that his courage was not about lifting heavy objects or performing daring feats. It was about knowing what needed to be done, taking responsibility and helping others do the same. The warriors continued their attempts, but their efforts felt scattered compared to the organized approach Ethan led. By the time the floodwaters receded, it was clear that his leadership had made the real difference. After the crisis, Naya approached Ethan to thank him. She could see the modesty in his eyes, the way he shrugged off praise as if it were unnecessary. He smiled gently and told her that he had simply done what was needed. There was no need for recognition, he said, because the right action was its own reward. Naya felt a deep admiration for him, realizing that his courage and integrity went far beyond anything the warriors had displayed. She felt safe in his presence, not because he was the strongest, but because he was thoughtful, wise, and reliable. The evenings in the town became moments for quiet reflection. As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting a warm glow across the streets, Naya and Ethan would often walk together along the edge of the town. They spoke about hopes and dreams, about what it meant to live a good life, and about the challenges they had faced in their youth. Ethan spoke with honesty, sharing moments of struggle and lessons learned, and Naya responded with her own thoughts and experiences. Their conversations deepened their connection, revealing a compatibility that was not based on appearances or skill, but on mutual understanding and respect. The warriors continued their displays, attempting to regain Naya's attention. Some engaged in contests of strength, others in feats of agility, and a few tried to showcase knowledge or wisdom. The crowd watched with excitement, but Naya found her thoughts often drifting back to Ethan. She realized that the bravery she valued most was not always visible, not always accompanied by applause or admiration. It was the courage to do what was right, the patience to help others, and the integrity to act with honesty. Ethan embodied these qualities, and she felt a growing certainty that her heart was being guided toward him. As the days passed, the bond between Naya and Ethan continued to grow in small, meaningful ways. One day, while repairing a small bridge that had been damaged by the rain, Ethan worked alongside Naya, showing her how to place the logs securely and explaining why each step mattered. He listened attentively as she shared her thoughts, never dismissing her ideas and always encouraging her to contribute. There was a sense of partnership in their actions, a recognition that they could achieve more together than alone. Naya felt a quiet joy in these moments, a sense of connection and trust that she had not experienced with anyone else. The warriors began to notice that their efforts were having less impact on Naya's attention. Some tried to challenge Ethan directly, questioning his skills or daring him to perform feats of strength. He politely declined, explaining that his presence in the town was not to compete, but to help and be part of the community. This response puzzled the warriors, some of whom were beginning to see that bravery and skill could be shown in ways they had not considered. Others remained stubborn, unwilling to accept that there was value in quiet courage and humility. The tension between the warriors and Ethan grew, though Naya found herself increasingly confident in her own judgment, recognizing the difference between appearance and substance. During a warm afternoon, a situation arose that tested their bond further. A stray horse had wandered into the town, frightened and uncontrolled, causing concern among the townspeople. The warriors rushed forward, trying to capture it with force, but their methods only made the horse more anxious. Ethan, noticing the fear in the animal, approached slowly, speaking softly and moving calmly. Naya watched as he gained the horse's trust, guiding it back to its owner without panic or harm. The townspeople cheered quietly, but there was no need for spectacle. The effectiveness of his actions spoke louder than any display. Naya felt pride and admiration for him, realizing that the man she was drawn to embodied the values she cherished most. As evening fell, the town settled into a calm rhythm. Naya and Ethan walked together near the outskirts, sharing quiet conversation and laughter. She felt her heart light, appreciating not only his strength and wisdom but the way he made her feel seen and understood. It was a connection built on trust, respect, and the quiet joy of companionship. The warriors rode past in the fading light, their skill undeniable. But Naya's thoughts were with the cowboy who had shown her what true courage and character looked like. In the following days, the town became a place of learning for everyone. The warriors continued their demonstrations, but the townspeople had begun to see the importance of patience, thoughtfulness, and genuine care. Ethan's actions subtly shifted the perspective of many, showing that courage was not always about spectacle, but about making wise choices and helping others. Naya felt a deepening certainty that her heart was aligned with his, even as the competition continued around them. The bond between Naya and Ethan grew stronger with each passing day. They shared quiet moments helping the townspeople, walking through the fields and speaking openly about their thoughts and feelings. It was a connection that transcended the displays of skill and strength, built instead on honesty, integrity, and the understanding that true courage came from the heart. Naya began to see clearly what she valued most in a partner, someone who would act with wisdom, kindness, and respect even when no one was watching. As night fell, the stars appeared in the clear sky above the town. Naya stood near the edge of the square, watching Ethan assist a young girl in carrying water back to her home. She felt a quiet joy, knowing that she had found someone whose heart matched her own values. The warriors rode past in the distance, still proud and determined, but she understood now that their displays were only part of the story. True courage, true connection, and true love were found not in spectacle, but in the quiet strength, wisdom, and care that Ethan had shown every day since his arrival. Naya felt a sense of anticipation for what the days ahead would bring, knowing that her choices would be guided by the lessons she had learned in the man who had quietly captured her heart. The morning began with a soft haze of sunlight, filtering through the trees at the edge of town. The air smelled of fresh earth and dust, a quiet calm before the day's work began. Naya had risen early to help with the morning chores, fetching water and checking on the animals. The town seemed ordinary, peaceful, but she knew that today could bring challenges that would test everyone, including the 12 warriors who continued to compete for her attention. Yet she also felt a quiet certainty in her heart, thinking of Ethan and the calm presence he always seemed to bring to any situation. As she walked toward the center of town, a sudden shout broke the morning stillness. A group of travelers had been spotted along the trail beyond the hills, and the news quickly spread that they were a band of outlaws known to the region for theft and mischief. Panic rose among the townspeople as they scrambled to prepare defenses. The warriors, eager to prove themselves, rushed forward with shouts and gestures ready to confront the threat. Their faces were determined, full of pride and anticipation, but Naya noticed the tension and chaos in their actions. They were skilled, yes, but uncoordinated and impatient. The danger required more than strength. It required judgment, planning, and calm action. Ethan stepped forward calmly, moving among the townspeople and assessing the situation. He spoke clearly, giving directions and organizing people to secure the buildings, herd the livestock to safe areas, and establish lookout positions. His voice carried authority not because of force or loudness, but because it was steady, clear, and thoughtful. People began to follow his guidance without hesitation. Naya felt her heart lift as she observed him, impressed not by grand feats but by his ability to act decisively under pressure. There was no panic in him, only careful awareness, and that made everyone around him feel safer. The warriors attempted to lead as well, but their eagerness to show courage made coordination difficult. Some ran ahead to confront the supposed outlaws without waiting for a plan. Others tried to organize groups but were distracted by the desire for recognition. Mistakes were made, and small accidents occurred, though thankfully no one was seriously harmed. Naya realized that bravery alone was not enough. Strength without wisdom could lead to harm, and she saw how Ethan's approach, quiet and calculated, brought a sense of order where chaos might otherwise reign. As the threat drew closer, Ethan mounted his horse and moved to the edge of town, signaling townspeople to remain calm. He and a small group carefully positioned themselves in strategic locations, using the terrain to their advantage. The warriors followed, still shouting commands and attempting to assert themselves, but their lack of cooperation made the situation tense. Naya watched from a safe distance, holding her breath as she saw the difference between those acting out of pride and those acting with thoughtfulness. The outlaws appeared at the trail, their numbers smaller than expected but armed and ready. They charged toward the town shouting, and the tension peaked. The warriors reacted immediately, drawing weapons and moving forward with bravado, hoping to impress Naya. The townspeople flinched at the noise and movement, unsure who to trust in the chaos. Ethan remained calm, directing the townspeople and signaling the warriors where their efforts would be most effective. He moved with precision, anticipating the actions of both the outlaws and his own people, ensuring minimal risk to anyone nearby. As the outlaws entered the edge of town, a confrontation erupted. The warriors engaged with strength and skill, attempting to block the intruders, but their lack of coordination and consideration for safety made it clear they could not control the situation alone. Ethan, on the other hand, directed the townspeople to form barricades, guided the warriors to strategic positions, and personally intervened at moments when quick thinking was required. His calm and deliberate actions turned what could have been a dangerous and chaotic encounter into a controlled defense. Naya watched awestruck at the balance of courage and wisdom in his behavior. In one moment, an outlaw broke through a barrier and charged toward the livestock pens. One of the warriors leaped to intercept, but his reckless approach left him off balance and the outlaw almost escaped. Ethan, seeing the threat, rode swiftly yet carefully, positioning himself between the outlaw and the animals. He disarmed the intruder with steady hands and a focused mind, without unnecessary violence or risk. The townspeople cheered quietly, not for the spectacle but for the safety and order that had been preserved. Naya felt a sense of deep admiration, realizing that this kind of bravery, quiet, effective, and protective, was far more valuable than any show of strength. The outlaws, seeing the organized and determined defense, decided to retreat. The warriors, exhausted and frustrated, watched as the threat disappeared over the hills. Some muttered in disbelief, questioning how a single cowboy had so effectively led the town to safety. Ethan simply dismounted, helping townspeople tend to minor injuries and checking the barriers to ensure no further danger remained. There was no boasting, no demand for recognition, only a careful attention to what was necessary and right. After the danger had passed, the townspeople gathered, grateful and relieved. They praised the warriors for their efforts, but many acknowledged that it had been Ethan's calm leadership that had made the real difference. Naya approached him, her eyes reflecting admiration and gratitude. She asked how he had stayed so calm when so many were panicked. He replied simply, saying that fear could cloud judgment, but focusing on what needed to be done helped make the right choices. Courage, he explained, was not about winning or showing off, but about taking responsibility and acting wisely, even when no one noticed. Naya felt the truth of his words deeply in her heart. The warriors, some begrudgingly, recognized the value in his actions. They had fought for recognition and admiration, But it was clear that skill and strength alone could not match the combination of wisdom, patience, and integrity that Ethan displayed. A few began to reflect on their own actions, considering that bravery might not always be about daring feats or competition, but about care and thoughtfulness in difficult situations. Others remained frustrated, unable to reconcile their pride with the quiet success they had witnessed. As evening fell, Naya and Ethan walked through the town, checking that all was safe and helping wherever needed. They spoke quietly, sharing thoughts about the day and the lessons learned. Naya expressed her admiration for the way he had handled the challenge, and Ethan spoke with humility, emphasizing that everyone had contributed and that courage often came from cooperation and understanding. Their conversation strengthened the bond between them, built on respect, trust, and the shared experience of facing danger together. The town, now safe and calm, had a newfound sense of appreciation for the quiet courage and thoughtful leadership that Ethan embodied. Naya felt a deepening certainty in her heart, recognizing that true bravery was not always visible in the grand displays of strength by the warriors, but in the careful, protective actions that ensured the safety and well-being of others. She began to understand that her choice in a partner would not be based on spectacle, but on character, integrity, and the ability to face challenges with wisdom and care. In the following days, life in the town returned to its usual rhythm. Though the events of the confrontation had left a lasting impression, the warriors continued their efforts to impress, but they did so with a new understanding that courage and leadership could take many forms. Naya observed them with a more discerning eye, noting not only their strength but also the qualities that mattered most to her: honesty, compassion, and wisdom. Ethan continued to assist the townspeople quietly, never seeking attention or reward, and Naya found herself increasingly drawn to his presence and guidance. The bond between Naya and Ethan grew stronger through shared tasks and conversations. They worked together to repair damage from the storm, care for the animals, and organize the community for future challenges. In each moment, Naya felt a growing admiration and trust, recognizing that his courage was consistent, thoughtful, and grounded in care for others. Unlike the warriors, whose bravery often sought recognition, Ethan's actions were motivated by a genuine desire to help and protect. This understanding deepened Naya's feelings, solidifying the connection that had begun to form in the earlier days of his arrival. Evenings became moments of quiet reflection and conversation for the two. As the sun dipped below the hills, they would walk along the outskirts of the town, speaking about hopes, dreams, and the challenges they had faced in life. Ethan shared stories of distant lands and experiences on the trails, while Naya spoke of her life near the hills, her family, and the values she held dear. Their conversations were simple, natural, and meaningful, creating a sense of partnership and mutual respect. Naya felt her heart open to the possibility of a life shared with someone who understood not only her mind, but her values and hopes. The warriors, observing the bond between Naya and Ethan, began to understand that their displays of skill and strength were not the only path to winning someone's admiration. Some felt a quiet respect for the cowboy, seeing that his courage and integrity had accomplished more than they could with their feats alone. Others remained frustrated, clinging to pride and tradition, but the contrast was clear. True courage, they realized, was not always loud or dramatic. It could be quiet, thoughtful, and profoundly effective. As night fell, the stars shone brightly above the town and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees. Naya stood near the edge of the square, watching Ethan assist a young child carrying firewood to her home. She felt a deep sense of peace and admiration, knowing that the man she had come to care for embodied the qualities she valued most. The warriors rode past in the distance, still proud and skilled, but Naya understood that true courage and strength were measured not only by feats, but by wisdom, care, and integrity. She felt a quiet anticipation for what the coming days would bring, confident that her heart had found its guide in the cowboy who had shown her the meaning of real bravery. The sun rose slowly over the hills, painting the town in a warm, golden light. It was a peaceful morning, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air. The 12 warriors had given their all to impress Naya, each showcasing bravery, skill, and strength. Yet the quiet presence of the cowboy, Ethan, had become the center of her thoughts. Over the days she had watched, observed, and learned more about what truly mattered in a partner. Today, the time had come to make a decision, a choice that would shape her life and the hearts of those around her. Naya stood at the edge of the square, looking at the warriors gathered in anticipation. Their faces were a mixture of pride, hope, and impatience, each waiting for her to speak. They had believed that strength, skill, and tradition alone could win her hand, and some of them looked to her with expectation. She felt a moment of empathy for them, understanding their efforts and the pride in their hearts. Yet she also knew that her choice could not be guided by what was expected or by the impressive feats they had displayed. She had learned that courage, bravery, and worth were measured not only in strength but in integrity, wisdom, and care for others. Ethan stood quietly nearby, watching the gathering with calm attentiveness. He had not sought recognition or competition, and he did not demand attention. His focus was on the well-being of the town, the safety of its people, and his own quiet understanding of what was right. Naya felt a deep sense of admiration and certainty as she looked at him. He had shown her what true courage was, not through dramatic feats but through patience, wisdom, and consistent care for others. She knew in her heart that her choice had been shaped not by spectacle but by genuine connection and shared values. The town had gathered to witness this moment, curious to see who Naya would choose. Some expected the decision to favor the warriors, thinking that skill and bravery in display were what mattered most. Others had noticed Ethan's quiet influence on the town and his effective guidance during past challenges. Whispers circulated among the crowd, reflecting surprise, doubt, and anticipation. Naya felt the weight of the moment, but also the clarity of her heart. She had observed, listened, and reflected, and she was ready to speak her truth. Taking a deep breath, Naya stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. She spoke first to the warriors, acknowledging their efforts and bravery. She praised their skills, their strength, and their dedication, emphasizing that she respected the courage they had shown and the traditions they represented. She recognized the pride and honor in their actions, and for a moment the town listened in silence, aware of her kindness and fairness in addressing them. The warriors' faces reflected a mix of relief, pride, and curiosity, as they wondered where her words would lead. Then she turned her attention to Ethan. Her gaze met his, and she felt the warmth and understanding in his steady eyes. She spoke of the courage she had witnessed in him, not in displays of strength or feats meant to impress, but in the quiet, consistent way he had acted with integrity, wisdom, and care for others. She described how he had guided the town through danger, helped those in need, and shown patience and understanding in moments that mattered most. Her voice conveyed admiration, respect, and an honest recognition of his character. The crowd listened, sensing the depth of her feelings and the thoughtfulness of her decision. Naya then declared her choice. She chose Ethan, not because he was the strongest or most skilled, but because he had shown her what true courage, partnership, and love could be. Her words were deliberate, full of honesty and reflection, and they carried the weight of careful observation and heartfelt consideration. The town fell silent for a moment, absorbing the significance of her decision. The 12 warriors, despite their disappointment, could see the wisdom and honesty in her choice. Some nodded with quiet respect, understanding that her heart had chosen wisely, while others struggled with the acceptance of a path different from their expectations. Ethan stepped forward, his calm demeanor unchanged, yet there was a subtle joy in his eyes. He spoke gently, thanking Naya for her trust and expressing his gratitude for the bond they had formed. He did not boast or claim victory, only acknowledged the partnership and respect they shared. Naya felt a deep sense of connection and relief, knowing that her choice was met with understanding, humility, and shared values. The town seemed to exhale collectively, recognizing that this decision reflected not only the union of two hearts but the lessons of courage, wisdom, and integrity that had shaped the days prior. The warriors, some still proud, began to disperse. A few approached Naya and Ethan to offer words of respect, acknowledging that her choice had been guided by heart and judgment, and that it was as much a reflection of her insight as of his character. Others left quietly, still wrestling with disappointment, yet unable to dismiss the truth in her reasoning. The townspeople, meanwhile, gathered around to offer congratulations, smiles, and shared warmth. There was a sense of community, relief, and harmony, as the quiet courage and integrity that had guided the choice became evident to all. In the days that followed, Naya and Ethan began their life together, not as a story of spectacle or competition, but as a narrative of partnership, respect, and shared responsibility. They worked together in the town, helping with chores, guiding the community, and addressing challenges with care and wisdom. Their companionship was built on trust, understanding, and the knowledge that courage was not measured by outward displays alone, but by the consistent choice to act with integrity and compassion. The bond they shared inspired those around them, subtly shaping the town's sense of community and values. The 12 warriors, having accepted the outcome, continued their lives with a new perspective. Some had learned that bravery and strength could be expressed in multiple ways, and that wisdom and care were qualities as valuable as physical skill. Others carried a lingering sense of disappointment, yet they could not ignore the effectiveness, calm, and thoughtfulness that had guided the town through challenges alongside Ethan. In time, many of the warriors found a quiet respect for him, recognizing that courage and leadership could be gentle yet powerful, humble yet undeniable. Naya and Ethan's partnership flourished through everyday life and shared experiences. They found joy in the simplicity of helping the town, walking together along the fields and sharing quiet conversation in the evenings. Their bond was not reliant on dramatic gestures, but on mutual respect, patience, and the understanding that their actions reflected the values they held dear. Each day reinforced the lessons of courage, kindness, and wisdom, and their presence together became a steady, reassuring force for those around them. The town itself began to reflect the change brought by their union. People observed the way actions guided by thoughtfulness and care could create harmony and safety. The community became more cooperative, more attentive to one another, and more appreciative of courage expressed not only through strength, but through integrity and compassion. The story of Naya's choice and Ethan's quiet bravery became a lesson for all who witnessed it, a tale of wisdom, patience, and the value of heartfelt decisions. Evenings were often spent walking along the outskirts of town, watching the sun dip behind the hills, and speaking softly of hopes, dreams, and the challenges ahead. Naya felt contentment and peace in these moments, knowing that her heart had chosen rightly. Ethan's calm, steady presence offered reassurance and strength, while her admiration, respect, and love offered encouragement and partnership. Together they navigated daily life, guided by values that had become the foundation of their bond. Occasionally, the warriors would pass through the town, acknowledging Ethan and Naya with respect and, in some cases, curiosity. Some had grown to appreciate the quiet leadership and thoughtful courage that had shaped the community. Others still measured bravery by feats and strength, yet even they could not ignore the results of actions guided by care and integrity. The town had learned, through observation and experience, that true courage could take many forms, and that the heart's choice often revealed the wisest path. Naya and Ethan continued to build their lives together, not as a story of rivalry won or strength displayed, but as a testament to the power of understanding, trust, and thoughtful action. Their days were filled with meaningful work, shared responsibilities, and moments of quiet joy. They found satisfaction in the way their actions influenced the town positively, helping others, resolving challenges, and maintaining harmony. Each day became a continuation of the lessons learned, demonstrating that courage, kindness, and integrity were as vital as skill and strength. As seasons changed, the bond between Naya and Ethan grew stronger. They faced challenges, celebrated successes, and supported one another through the ordinary and the unexpected. Their partnership became a symbol for the town, a living reminder that the heart's guidance, thoughtful courage, and quiet strength were qualities that could inspire and protect a community. Naya felt gratitude for the journey that had led her to Ethan, understanding that her choice was shaped not by appearances, but by the values and actions that mattered most. In the quiet moments, when the sun set over the hills and the town rested in calm reflection, Naya would stand beside Ethan, feeling the warmth of his hand and the assurance of his presence. Together they looked toward the horizon, knowing that life would bring challenges and joys, but that their bond, grounded in respect, integrity, and love, would guide them through each day. The 12 warriors had fought bravely, but the story that endured was one of quiet courage, thoughtful partnership, and a heart-led choice that reflected the truest measure of strength. Naya's decision had not only shaped her own life, but had subtly transformed the town. People came to understand that courage was multifaceted, that leadership could be gentle yet powerful, and that the heart's choice often revealed the wisdom that feats and display could not. Ethan's presence, calm and unwavering, offered a model of how one could lead, act, and live with integrity. Naya felt pride, not in triumph over others, but in the recognition that she had followed her heart and chosen a path guided by true values. The days continued with steady rhythm, work, and simple joys. Naya and Ethan moved together through life, their bond a foundation for harmony and understanding. The town thrived, influenced by their example, and the legacy of quiet courage and thoughtful bravery remained a guiding principle. Naya often reflected on the journey, realizing that her choice had been a culmination of observation, reflection, and heartfelt recognition of character. Ethan, ever modest, continued to act with the same calm integrity that had drawn her to him, and together they embodied the lessons of courage, partnership, and love that would be remembered by the town for years to come.